Good evening from ABC News headquarters in Washington. I'm Howard K. Smith.
I'm Frank Reynolds in New York. These are tonight's headlines. After a stormy launch from Cape Kennedy, the Apollo 12 astronauts have left Earth orbit and are headed for the moon. Dr. Benjamin Spock leads an anti-draft protest at the Justice Department as the March Against Death continues through a second day. Controversy grows over Vice President Agnew's criticisms of network television news. And a royal celebration in London for Prince Charles on the future king's 21st birthday. Howard?
Reports tonight from Jules Bergman with details on today's dramatic launch of Apollo 12, Stephen Gear on the moratorium, Roger Peterson on a unique protest in New York, Ted Koppel with an exclusive interview with President Marcos on Philippine troop withdrawals from Vietnam, Sam Donaldson with reaction to Vice President Agnew's speech on network television news, and Bill Butel on the British monarchy, an expensive but welcome luxury in a land of austerity. Frank?
They're on their way to the moon, the three astronauts of Apollo 12, Pete Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean. President Nixon was there to watch the launch this morning at Cape Kennedy. Despite bad weather, Apollo 12 got off the launch pad exactly on time, but the mission was not without its moments of anxiety. ABC science editor Jules Bergman has the story from Cape Kennedy.
The weather forecast here at the Cape called for occasional showers. Well, there were showers, all right. Heavy rain, in fact, more than just occasional showers. And along with thousands of others, the president got a little damp as he arrived at a special viewing area after his flight from Washington. But the weather did little to dampen the excitement as the moment of liftoff drew near.
We have guidance internal. 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running, commit, liftoff. We have liftoff, 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Liftoff, the clock's running. I got a yaw program. Roger, clear the tower. I got a pitch and a roll program, and this baby is really going. Roger, Pete. That's a lovely liftoff. That's not bad at all. Roll's complete. Roger, Pete.
The awesome thundering of the Saturn V's engines was still reverberating throughout the entire spaceport when something went wrong. The Saturn V was hidden in the rainstorm covering the Cape when 35 seconds after liftoff, Pete Conrad reported trouble.
Okay, we just lost the platform, gang. I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out. Roger. Okay, now we're straightening out our problems here. I don't know what happened. I'm not sure if we get hit by lightning.
But the engines kept going and the flight path was beautiful. Conrad, Gordon, and Bean kept their cool and got all the systems working again. And in early afternoon performed the critical engine burn, heading themselves toward the moon. One thing for sure, it'll be a long time before another spacecraft is ever launched in a rainstorm. As soon as Apollo 12 was safely in orbit, the president made a brief tour of the Kennedy Space Center. At one point, he addressed several hundred officials and engineers assembled in the Launch Control Center.
We are going forward. America, the United States, is first in space. We're proud to be first in space. We don't say that in any jingoistic way. We say it because as Americans, we want to give the people of this country, and particularly our young people, the feeling that here is an area that we can concentrate for a positive goal. Concentrate and be proud of being Americans. Be proud of what we have accomplished, not only for ourselves, but for future generations and for the whole world. And in that vein, I simply want to say, I'm proud of those three men up there. I talked to them on the phone before they left, and I'm just as proud of everybody in this room and of the thousands across this country that made it possible.
Later in the day, Apollo 12 gave us our first on-board television transmission. Here's part of it.
Hey, Jerry, it's a fantastic sight. The Mississippi Valley has a little bit of cloud coverage coming down from Canada, and there's some in the northeast part of the country. Up in the New England states, looks like it may be getting some snow here in the next day or two.
The next major scheduled event is a critical engine burn tomorrow, a maneuver that gives them a better view of their lunar landing site, but deprives them of safely swinging around the moon automatically should the engines fail. Also scheduled tomorrow, another television transmission. And so, despite a slightly harrowing start, Pete Conrad, Al Bean, and Dick Gordon are safely on their way to the moon tonight. This is Jules Bergman, ABC News at Cape Kennedy.
We'll have more news in a moment.
Welcome aboard Qantas Airways.
That awful music.
Oh, no trouble at all, sir.
And why does that girl keep smiling? And grown men in those uniforms? Bribing people with things to eat and things to drink and even things for their paws. So they'll fly Qantas to Europe and Asia and Australia. Me. I hate Qantas.
As President Nixon flew back to the White House this afternoon, he could look down and see a long, single-file procession stretching from Arlington Cemetery past the White House and on to the Capitol. It's called the March Against Death, and it's been underway without pause since 6 o'clock last night. 1,000 marches an hour past the White House gates. Details now from ABC's Stephen Gear.
A cold rain began to fall on Washington this afternoon, but they continued to march the 4 long miles from Arlington Cemetery to the Capitol. It's a quiet procession, this March Against Death, its solemn aspect emphasized by the placards carried by the demonstrators, each card bearing the name of an American killed in Vietnam. 2 noisier demonstrations took place this afternoon, both at the Justice Department. In one, several hundred yippies, along with Dr. Benjamin Spock, called for an end to the trial of the Chicago 8-1. Troops were in the courtyard for the first time since World War II, but Dr. Spock said they weren't necessary.
I'm sure they won't be necessary to take care of us.
You don't expect any violence, any difficulty?
I certainly do not. This is an entirely peaceful and orderly crowd.
Dr. Spock was right. After the presentation of the petition to Justice Department officials, the yippies returned to the mall. But a few minutes later, an ad-lib, ad hoc group of young people came back to the Justice Department for an unscheduled visit.
I have to bring some police officers in and move you out.
The purpose of this demonstration was to turn in 97 draft cards collected in Philadelphia during the October 15th moratorium. For a time, it seemed a confrontation might develop, but police and mobilization leaders pleaded for the crowd to disperse. About 50 policemen with nightsticks lined the sidewalk. After about half an hour, the protesters did leave as the rain began to fall. Meanwhile, the March Against Death goes on quietly. It will continue through the night until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, when perhaps 200,000 will parade along the wide avenues of this capital to demonstrate their displeasure with the war in Vietnam. Stephen Gear, ABC News, Washington.
Late this afternoon, a detachment of Marines set up camp on the grounds of the Capitol, and troops were ordered into all government buildings, including the White House. A Marine command post has been set up under the Capitol dome. Most demonstrations elsewhere in the country have been as mild and peaceful as the protest here. ABC's Roger Peterson reports from New York.
10,000 people were expected here in Central Park, but only 3,000 to 4,000 came. Most of them were quite young, perhaps half less than 20 years old. But the clean-shaven generation was also represented. As the drum roll sounded, the demonstrators began stretching out on the wet grass to symbolize what it would look like if some of the Vietnam dead were placed in rows above ground. The mournful notes of taps sounded, and thousands of balloons were released to float up over the city. The balloons are also symbolic of the Vietnam dead. The black balloons mourning those who have died since President Nixon took office. The white mourning those who will die if the war does not end.
Give peace a chance.
Roger Peterson, ABC News in New York Central Park.
After President Nixon announced troop withdrawals in June, the Sendlinger public opinion firm reported that 72% of the people supported Nixon. Their latest tally, released today, shows that support now up to a record 79%. We'll be back with more news in a moment.
There are some things about orange flavor Tang just about everybody knows. It's the energy breakfast drink, has rich, natural taste, and even more vitamin C than orange juice. And, oh yes, obviously, Tang is easy to make. But very few people know that Tang also develops a sense of responsibility. Especially in the young. No one should leave in the morning without his vitamin C. Isn't it great when you can serve a breakfast drink that has so much nourishment and builds character? Fact is, Tang was chosen to go to the moon with the Apollo astronauts. Tang, as nourishing here on Earth as in outer space.
The heaviest fighting in Vietnam today took place between South Vietnamese troops and North Vietnamese regulars near the Green Beret camp at Bu Prang, close to the Cambodian border. In one of those battlefront misadventures, South Vietnamese pilots flying in bad weather bombed their own lines. At least 20 men were killed. The major objective in turning over more of the fighting to the South Vietnamese is to hasten American troop withdrawals. The United States is not the only ally that wants its men out, as we learned from this exclusive interview ABC's Ted Koppel had with Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos.
The subject of Philippine withdrawal from Vietnam has been half decided for some time now. Today, in an exclusive interview with ABC News, President Marcos dropped the other shoe.
The Foreign Policy Council recommended unanimously the withdrawal of PhilCAV. And I intend to redeploy them to the rural areas.
Are you talking about all the Filipino troops?
Yes.
Why is that? When I talked to you a number of weeks ago, you said possibly there might be a phased withdrawal, matching the American withdrawal. What made you decide to withdraw all PhilCAV troops?
Well, from my point of view, the most important is lack of funds. The Congress appropriated $6 million, and the $6 million is going to be exhausted by the end of the year.
Now, how quickly is this going to happen?
Oh, it won't take so quickly. It will take about a month and a half, I guess.
So in other words, by the end of the year, all Filipino troops will be out of Vietnam?
Yes.
In his speech to the Senate yesterday, President Nixon cautioned against undue public discussion of controversial issues that might, in the president's words, weaken or compromise us with those representing the other side. Mr. Nixon mentioned specifically the strategic arms limitation talks by American and Russian negotiators opening Monday in Helsinki, Finland. From ABC's George Watson now, a view of that meeting place.
This Arctic icebox of Europe is not the place where diplomats normally congregate. But the Russians insisted it was a good place for negotiations. The Americans reluctantly agreed, and so here we are in Helsinki. The snow comes early and stays late in Finland, and the weather certainly seems appropriate for talks about the Cold War. The harsh climate, no doubt, has had much to do with making the Finns what they are, rugged, resilient, and fiercely independent people. The Finns have not only survived, they have prospered. This is the main department store in Helsinki. There is nothing like it in Moscow or anywhere else in the communist world. In fact, Finland enjoys one of the highest standards of living anywhere in the world. Yet the Finns seem to have made the transition from their impoverished rural past to the prosperous present without strewing the land with ugliness. On the contrary, the words "made in Finland" are almost synonymous with good design and good taste. Despite its precarious proximity to Russia, Finland has an overwhelmingly free enterprise economy. Still, the government does have heavy influence in many industries, and government planning is taken for granted. This is the planned community of Tapiola. 16,000 Finns live here. It was created by battalions of architects and sociologists determined to build a community that respected the individuality of its citizens and the nearness of nature. Finland and her Scandinavian neighbors have created the most prosperous, orderly, and democratic group of nations anywhere in the world. The solutions that work here are not necessarily the prescriptions for civilized society elsewhere. But as the negotiators arrive here from Moscow and from Washington, they ought to look around. They might even learn something. This is George Watson, ABC News, Helsinki.
We'll have more news in a moment.
Look, it's the first cough of the cold season.
Oh, my.
See, the scratchy-throated rasper.
Oh, it's very rare.
And look, a blue-beaked hacker. Oh, and it's a big one.
Your first cough this season may be a big one. And that means Vicks Formula 44 Extra Strength Cough Mixture with a cough suppressant as effective as codeine but not narcotic. If you can't get away for the cold season.
You're a big girl now, with your own job, your own apartment, and your own cold. If Mother were here, she'd know what to do. Remember, she always rubbed you with Vicks Vapor Rub, and you breathed easier and everything was sort of warm and all right again. And you didn't cough and ache so much. Vapor Rub Decongestant Ointment. It still helps you breathe easier and get a good night's sleep. It's almost like going home.
Almost half the cost of color TV can be right here in the picture tube. Only one manufacturer, only Admiral, gives you a 3-year warranty on the new Super Bright Color picture tube. And when you're the only one who gives a 3-year replacement warranty, you'd better have the quality behind it. Admiral does. We think it's the best picture tube money can buy. Because we build our own tubes at Admiral, we control the quality. Quality control that includes 280 inspection points. Precision manufacturing like this gives you this. The exclusive Admiral 3-year warranty with no extra charge except for service and installation. It's on dramatic new color portables, convenient rollouts, and elegant fine furniture consoles. Only Admiral gives you a 3-year warranty on every color picture tube. Only Admiral has that much confidence in its color TV.
Last night's speech by Vice President Agnew, sharply criticizing television network news as biased, provoked a response today from thousands of Americans. The Associated Press, after a random survey of radio and television stations, said calls are running 3-1 in favor of the Agnew comments. The White House said that President Nixon watched the speech and he reaffirmed his support for the Vice President, but a spokesman added jokingly that the President himself has not discussed news coverage since 1962, when he told reporters he was through. For examples of other reaction, here is ABC's Sam Donaldson.
There has been much public discussion of network news practices since the Chicago convention of last year. That city's mayor, highly critical of the convention coverage, was asked about the Agnew speech by ABC's Howard Tuckner.
Can you please give me your full reaction to this?
I thought it was one of the greatest talks ever delivered by any man in public office. I think it took courage and determination, and in presenting to the American people actually a serious problem that confronts us. I'm for breaking down the monopoly out of New York and having the news broadcast out of Chicago, and have it broadcast out of the Rocky Mountain area, and have it broadcast out of California. Why shouldn't we have difference of opinion?
Theodore H. White, quoted by Agnew in How Television News Distorted in Chicago, disagrees with the broad indictment of television and its commentators.
It's made enormous blunders. They can be corrected, but in no sense is there a sinister group of men trying to distort or conceal the truth from the American people.
The Vice President appears to worry that there's a small core of individuals who make the judgments about what goes on television news programs, and that these people are out of touch with the country.
Who are they? Walter Cronkite of Texas, Howard Smith of Louisiana, Chet Huntley of Montana, Eric Severide from Belleville, North Dakota, Gordon Manning from Boston, Massachusetts. Those aren't Manhattanites. Those are boys who come from all over the country.
On Capitol Hill, Agnew's speech drew both denunciation and support.
What the Vice President seemed to imply last night, that somehow
The people who are giving us the news are responsible for the anxieties and the troubles in American society today. In my opinion, they are reporting the truth. And they're reporting it as they see it.
Without referring to any particular network, I think there are some commentators who show that they are completely in sympathy with the other party and an extremely liberal trend of thought.
President Nixon's communications director, Herbert Klein, says Agnew was voicing the administration feeling, although Klein does not agree that a presidential speech should not be followed by network analysis.
I do think it's proper to interpret it, to give the American people more background, and if you have a balanced discussion, why criticism will become a part of it. On the other hand, if it's not balanced, and so that the entire program becomes one of a rebuttal to the previous speech, it doesn't seem to me that fits with a network tradition. Networks carry a great responsibility. I know they realize it, but I think that perhaps when they're looking at themselves, they haven't taken the time to see whether in this context they're doing the very best job they can in carrying out their function. I think it ought to be self-examination. I would be opposed to government examination.
Dean Birch, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, who has been studying the network transcripts for the post-Nixon analysis, called the vice president's comments thoughtful and provocative. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, Washington.
We'll be back with more news in a moment.
What are you doing 9:15 Saturday morning? What about 11 o'clock Saturday morning? What are you doing at 2:45 Saturday afternoon? What about 4:15? What are you doing at 12:30 Sunday? The weekend. Special places to go, special things to do. Visiting by long distance is one of them. And phone rates are low all weekend, as little as $1 plus tax coast to coast. Call early this weekend, before the Sunday evening rush hours. What are you doing this weekend?
Britain's Prince Charles has come of age. The young man who someday is expected to sit on the throne of England turned 21 today, and the occasion was celebrated in true royal fashion. In addition to the personal gifts and congratulations, Prince Charles gets a major raise in his allowance, an additional $192,000 a year, which might help the recently publicized financial pinch at the palace. Royalty is not an inexpensive luxury. ABC's Bill Butel explains why from London.
This is the British monarchy on parade. 900 years of tradition. Elizabeth II, the 40th monarch to sit on the British throne, carries on her shoulders the majesty and mystery of the centuries. And the British people foot the bill. The bill is something like $5 million a year. Now and then the cry is raised here in Britain that the monarchy isn't worth the money. So when Prince Philip said they'd sold a yacht to cut down expenses, everyone remembered the Britannia, the one they haven't sold. It cost $5 million to build, $1 million a year to keep her afloat. Most of the British people are willing to pay for the royal family. But the Queen, after all, is one of the wealthiest women in the world, with a personal fortune of probably $150 million. She's that wealthy because she pays no taxes, in a country where nearly everyone else is almost crippled by taxes. So when Prince Philip said he might have to give up polo to cut down expenses, and that the Queen needed more money from the government to make ends meet at Buckingham Palace, well, there was no talk of rebellion, but there wasn't much sympathy either. Prime Minister Wilson took the eternal refuge of politicians and appointed a committee.
Because the British monarchy is a little bit like a marriage. It's not wise to examine it too closely too often. It's expensive. A lot of it is just ceremonial, and you can never be sure if it's really necessary. But like most marriages, the British monarchy is a practical arrangement. It works, it's convenient, it's comfortable, and it survives. This is Bill Butel, ABC News, London.
We'll be back in a moment.
Pete, see you later. Take care of that leg, huh?
Yeah. Live it up, you guys. Well, I guess it's just you and me, buddy.
Yeah, me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing, a real good taste.
Hi.
Yeah, me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing.
When it comes to keeping a guy good company, there's almost nothing like a Winston. One taste, and it'll be you and your Winstons.
Me and my Winstons, me and my Winstons, we got a real good thing, 'cause my Winstons taste good like a cigarette should.
Yeah, Winston King or Super King, you got a real good thing.
In place of a commentary tonight, we are bringing you the replies in full of the presidents of the 3 television networks to Vice President Agnew's address last night. First, Leonard Goldenson, president of the American Broadcasting Companies. In our judgment, the performance of ABC News has always been and will continue to be fair and objective. In the final analysis, it is always the public who decides on the reliability of any individual or organization. We will continue to report the news accurately and fully, confident in the ultimate judgment of the American public. That was the statement of Mr. Leonard Goldenson of ABC. Dr. Frank Stanton of CBS said in his statement, "No American institution, including network news organizations, should be immune to public criticism or to public discussion of its performance. In a democracy, this is entirely proper. We do not believe, however, that this unprecedented attempt by the Vice President of the United States to intimidate a news medium which depends for its existence upon government licenses represents legitimate criticism. The public, according to opinion polls, has indicated again and again that it has more confidence in the credibility of television news than in that of any other news medium. Our newsmen have many times earned commendations for their enterprise and for their adherence to the highest professional standards. Since human beings are not infallible, there are bound to be occasions when their judgment is questioned. Whatever their deficiencies, they are minor compared to those of a press which would be subservient to the executive power of government." That was the statement of Dr. Frank Stanton of CBS. And here is the statement of Julian Goodman, the president of NBC. Vice President Agnew's attack on television news is an appeal to prejudice. More importantly, Mr. Agnew uses the influence of his high office to criticize the way a government-licensed news medium covers the activities of government itself. Any fair-minded viewer knows that the television networks are not devoted to putting across a single point of view, but present all significant views on issues of importance. It is regrettable that the Vice President of the United States would deny to television freedom of the press. Evidently, he would prefer a different kind of television reporting, one that would be subservient to whatever political group was in authority at the time. Those who might feel momentary agreement with his remarks should think carefully whether that kind of television news is what they want. That was the statement of Mr. Julian Goodman, the president of NBC. Howard?
That's tonight's news. I'm Howard K. Smith. Good night.